If you were a Soviet citizen in the 1980s, you would have been surrounded by propaganda similar to this. Mikhail Gorbachev had complete control of everything one could see and experience throughout their daily lives. However, his policies of glasnost and perestroika were passed, and these capitalist reforms began a trend that opposed the Soviet communist ideals and resulted in the implosion of their government. As many know, buffer states were created at the end of the Soviet Union, with the general public believing that these were completely successful and thriving economies, full of people that were happy with what happened. But this is completely not the case. The exact opposite occurred. Let's backtrack a bit. The ex-Soviet countries are as listed: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. The gross domestic product decreased by 40% directly after the fall of the Soviet Union. In comparison, the United States only fell 27% during the height of the Great Depression. From 1991 to 1995, there was no economy, and this created an environment with no structure, no morals, and no boundaries to which anyone could control. Since 1995, however, things have slowly improved. Certain countries have also become so stagnant that since the end of the Soviet Union in 1991, there has been no change of leadership whatsoever. Perfect examples of this are Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Out of the 15 countries that were created after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, only 6 have reached a higher human development rate than the previously moderately successful Soviet Union. These 6 are Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia. These people in these countries are mostly decently successful with their economy and their healthcare. However, the other countries that were not named under these 6 are very, very unsuccessful and have very many issues as far as healthcare, economy, and just basically living their lives. These people are not as happy in these countries, and they're not nearly as successful as they were in the Soviet Union. So tell me, after the Soviet Union fell, how did you feel about the Soviet Union?
It's a Russian democratic government. There is widespread corruption in the government. Many of the president himself is even under payroll. He's just terrible.
As we see firsthand, times in ex-Soviet states were not better than being in the Soviet Union. A large attempt at creating a better economy was the creation of multiple area-wide economic organizations, such as the Commonwealth of Independent States, the Eurasian Economic Community, the Customs Union of Belarus, the CIS Free Trade Area, and the Collective Treaty Organization. Do you feel as if the economic unions created after the end of the Cold War and the fall of Soviet Russia have been effective in uniting all the ex-Soviet countries?
Yet these new unions, they're not very effective. I mean, they are great ideas at the time, but on paper, but when you put them into motion, they do not work. They're terrible.
So you feel that a lot of the unity between other countries has failed?
Yet. But under the Soviet Union, we ruled with an iron fist. They could not break away. But they gave them an option of being in their group, in their union. So that means there's less unity between them. They're not like almost one country.
So you feel if you brought the Soviet Union back, you'd have a more structured government, you'd have a better economic.
Yes, because with one ruler is better. Because we all have jobs, we all have food, we all have water. Now, only the businessmen have everything they want. All these rich people have everything they want. With all the poor, there's no middle class. All the poor is just either rich or poor.
Now, the Soviet Union failed originally, and that's why we're in this situation now. Do you think bringing it back now would have an effect, or do you think it would just collapse like it did before?
It's Gorbachev. He decided to become more of a democracy than a dictatorship. He stopped ruling with an iron fist like the previous.
Now, one final question. Are you drunk right now?
Duh.
Many of these hardships have caused citizens and government officials to consider bringing back a new Soviet Union, per se. Examples of this are Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, which have signed petitions and are gaining support in a reform that would bring these countries together into one, creating essentially a democratic Soviet Union. As you can see from all of this information, the ex-Soviet bloc countries are not as successful, and the people in them are not as happy as they were in the Soviet Union. We have a case of people wanting to overthrow a government they didn't like and ending up with something even worse than what they had before.